Give a smile, give a smile. Give a smile, give a smile. Be the reason someone smiles. Give a smile, give a smile. Give a smile, give a smile. Give a smile, give a smile. Be the reason someone smiles. Give a smile, give a smile, give a smile. Be the reason someone smile. Give a smile, give a smile, give a smile, give a smile. Give a smile, give a smile. Be the reason someone smiles. Sivan.
See Breakfast with Elli.
Mode ani lefanecha melech chai vekayam shechezarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha.
Do you know your Jewish months? Tishrei Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet Shvat Adar, Nisan Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz Av Elul. Tishrei Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet Shvat Adar, Nisan Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz Av Elul. The Jewish months go by the moon and bring us joy and cheer. They tell us when to celebrate the holidays each year. Now repeat them after me, one at a time. Tishrei, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Cheshvan, Kislev, Kislev, Tevet, Tevet, Shivan, Shivan, Adar, Adar, Nisan, Nisan, Iyar, Iyar, Sivan, Sivan, Tammuz, Tammuz, Av, Av, Elul, Elul. Tishrei Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet Shvat Adar, Nisan Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz Av Elul. Tishrei Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet Shvat Adar, Nisan Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz Av Elul. The Jewish months go by the moon and bring us joy and cheer. They tell us when to celebrate the holidays each year.
Good morning, good Chodesh. Welcome to Breakfast with Elli. It's Monday, the 19th day of June, the 30th day on the first day of Rosh Tammuz, the year of Hakhel 5783, the Torah portion is the Torah. HaYom, Sheini, the second day, HaYom, 2030, Hakhel, Aliyah. All right, the month of Tammuz, the fourth of the 12 months of the Jewish year. The month of Tammuz begins the season of summer. The season months are Tammuz, Av, and Elul. The 17th day of Tammuz is a fast day commemorating the day when the walls of Jerusalem were breached by the Romans. It marks the beginning of a period known as the 3 weeks, an annual mourning period where we mourn the destruction of the Holy Temple and the cause of our ongoing exile. It reaches its climax and concludes with the fast of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, the date when both holy temples were set afire. Because of this and numerous other tragedies that occurred through Jewish history during this period, we lessen our extent of rejoicing during the 3-week period and the days leading up to it. All right, so there you have it. The month of Tammuz, the beginning of a cycle. All right, a cycle that we hope will end with the coming of Mashiach in our generation. Now, this idea is particularly emphasized in a Hakhel year, where we are commanded to gather the Jewish nation, the men, the women, and the children. And one of the mitzvahs of the Torah, Hashem tells us that this year is uniquely suited to gathering the entire Jewish people, even very young children, assembled in the temple, addressed by the king. Now, in our time, that can only come about when Mashiach, who will be our king, will rebuild the temple. Similarly, in regards to Hashem's army and hasten the victory and to bring Mashiach speedily. In addition, all the children that are already enrolled in Tzivas Hashem, the army of Hashem, Hashem sends reserves and new soldiers, new Jewish children, boys and girls, to learn Torah and fulfill mitzvahs. Those are the weapons of Hashem's army. This will accomplish in the fastest way possible the task which Hashem has assigned to our generation, particularly this year, a Hakhel year, bringing the messianic redemption now. Let's hope that that happens speedily. Speedily. Now is even better. All right. That takes us to our first task of the day, making a bracha over our tzitzis. Men and boys, two front tzitzis, let's go. Make a bracha. You know how to do this.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mitzvat tzitzit.
Right. Everyone together, al divrei Torah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al divrei Torah.
Mekabel.
Hareini mekabel alay mitzvat aseh shel ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. I take upon myself every single day to love my fellow friend in a very special way.
Torah Tziva.
Ay Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha keilat Yaakov. Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha keilat Yaakov.
All right, time to give tzedakah.
I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki for someone else to keep. Yeah, I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki, the tzedakah box. I put it in the pushki for someone else in need.
All right, and tzedakah has now been given. There you go. All right, and that brings us to the saying of the Shema. Are you ready? Let's do it. Right hand over your eyes, please. And we will say the Shema together.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
And now, we've earned breakfast.
Hakhel Biederman,
All right. Guess what I have? Coffee and yogurt. Ready? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'hakol nihya b'dvaroi.
Coffee, blessed coffee. God bless you for being a friend. When the whole world turns on me, it's only you on which I can depend. I want to taste you in the morning and a few times throughout the day. Yes, a cup or two in the evening too. For me, it's the only way.
All right. Today in Jewish history. Today is the yahrzeit of Rabbi Shlomo Kluger from 1869. He was the rabbi of Brody, one of the renowned halachic authorities of his day, a prolific writer, authoring over 100 books. Today, in the year 1096, the Crusaders massacred the Jews of Mer, and a resident tax on Hungarian Jews was abolished in 1846. Henry Ford retracted and apologized for his publication of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. He remained, though, an anti-Semite until the end of his life. After more than 1 month at sea, the steamship St. Louis docked at Antwerp with more than 900 Jewish refugees on board. The ship had left Hamburg, bound for Havana, Cuba, but was only granted limited entry into Cuba and not allowed to dock in the United States in 1939. And the British arrested 100 Jews in Palestine on what is known as the Black Shabbos. Today, the first day of Rosh Chodesh, the head of the month of Tammuz, special portions are added to the daily prayer. The Hallel is recited in its partial form. Yalav Yavo is added to the Amidah and the grace after meals, and the additional Musaf is said today. Many have the custom to mark Rosh Chodesh with a festive meal and a reduced workload, especially the women. That is correct. All right, HaYom Yom for today, the 30th day of Sivan. Come on, guys.
Jealousy is like a can of Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop. So if you're constantly looking over your shoulder and you just need to have that which your fellow has, that which your friend has, it's a terrible way to live. Because even if you're fortunate enough to get that thing that you are, to get whatever it is that you are jealous of, it never ends. There's always going to be somebody out there that has something that you don't have. Jealousy is terrible. In the words of our sages, it takes man out of this world. It causes man to lose his very life, because jealousy forces a person into the perpetual pursuit of material things. That's not a very good way to live. The Alter Rebbe was once talking to a man in Yechidus. This was a very young, a genius of a man, a very talented fellow, young fellow. And the Alter Rebbe was counseling him in Yechidus. And the Alter Rebbe pointed out that when you're talking about the pitfall of jealousy, or to flip it, if you're talking about the virtue of just being content, you know, some people, they're just always happy. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what's going on. You know, it doesn't matter if things are going well or not so well. They're just content. I have a lot, I have a little, I'm just okay. Jealousy is the worst type of way to live, and being content is the most wonderful blessing. But the Alter Rebbe points out, he says that when you're talking about spiritual pursuits, things are turned completely on their heads. Our rabbis say that kinat sofrim tarbe chachma. When people who are studying, when scholars are studying together, and there's this sense of competition, there's this sense of I'd love to be able to probe this idea even deeper than my colleagues have. It's actually a wonderful thing, because the end result is that we all end up smarter. So with any spiritual pursuit, being content is actually not a virtue. It's okay to be jealous. As a matter of fact, it's a mitzvah to be jealous. Now, with spiritual jealousy, the Pringles line is true again. Once you pop, you can't stop. So somebody who is never content who is not content with their spiritual standing, and constantly looking at the virtues, the spiritual virtues, the character virtues, the moral virtues of the other person, saying, wow, what a gift, what a nice way to behave. I wish I could be like that one day soon. That's spiritual jealousy, and it's going to send you into a perpetual pursuit to constantly strive to go further and further and reach a better and better, a more moral place, a more meaningful place, a holier place. That'll be a perpetual pursuit for the rest.
All right. And now we're going to go on to a word from our sponsors.
And now, a word from our sponsors. PestProRidall.com.
PestProRidall.com, trusted by the best to keep away the pests. We are offering COVID-19 disinfection services. Mention this ad and get 1 month free service. Visit us at PestProRidall.com.
Tarzane Group, micro, miniature, and small orchids. Go to tarzanegroup.com or call Tomas at 305-440-0565. That's 305-440-0565 and order today. Visit Tomas and Yair at tarzanegroup.com. Micro, miniature, and small orchids, beautiful in your home. Go to the website and read Tomas's orchid blog. And by Dina D Design. DinaDDesign@gmail.com. Fine artwork, custom made to your specifications. Logos, wall hangings, Judaica. And you can even have something for your child's room. Dina D Designs. Go to her Facebook or Instagram or call or text. Thank you very much to our sponsors. If you'd like to become a sponsor, please go right up here to where it says patreon.com/theactorsrabbi, and you can contribute even only $1 a month if you'd like, but that'll help us bring this broadcast to you on a daily basis and cover our expenses. Be sure to thank your sponsors when shopping and mention Breakfast with Elli when you're shopping there. There might be discounts. Thanks for watching.
Torah, 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 Sivan lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Sivan lanu Moshe.
Patreon.com is the actor's rabbi, or breakfastbelly.live/tipjar if you would like to contribute to bringing Torah to the world today. And I can't tell you how important that is to bring Torah into the whole world. All right? This week's Parsha is named after the central character, Korach, Moshe's first cousin. Not long after the events of the previous Parsha, which was the episode of the 12 spies and its aftermath, making the Jews wander in the desert for 40 years, Korach led a rebellion against Moshe's leadership. Now, this Parsha is devoted entirely to narrating this rebellion and Hashem's reaction to it. One of the curious aspects of this revolt is its timing. After all, Moshe led the people out of Egypt over a year earlier. Certainly, if Korach and the other instigators of this mutiny had grievances against Moshe, there was ample time to voice them before this. Furthermore, Hashem had just unquestionably endorsed Moshe's leadership by supporting him against the argument of the spies and refusing to aid any attempt at conquering the land without Moshe's involvement. Now, of all times, would seem the least opportune time to try and mount a rebellion against Moshe. In fact, it was not despite the events of the previous Parsha that Korach chose to rebel now, but precisely because of them. In essence, Korach disagreed with Moshe and Aaron's definition of the relationship between the lay people and the Kohen, the priest, between the mundane and the holy aspects of creation. In Korach's view, the man on the street who spends the majority of his day in the mundane activities of life is just as holy as the priest whose entire day is spent doing the service of the holy temple. Korach noted Hashem's reaction to the spies' desire to remain in the desert. As we said in the previous Parsha, in the desert, the Israelites lived a purely spiritual lifestyle, protected by the clouds of glory and nourished by the manna as well. And the spies did not want to enter a land that, quote, consumes its inhabitants, and that meant earthly distractions. Moshe then made it clear that it was Hashem's will that we should enter the land and make it holy. Hashem wanted them to enter the mundane realities of a natural human existence, even at the expense of losing their spiritual clarity and vision, which they enjoyed in the desert. To uplift the mundane was, in fact, the purpose of all creation. If so, argued Korach, and this is where he made his mistake, why must the layman look up to the priest? We will continue exploring that tomorrow. In the second Aliyah, Moshe pleads with Hashem not to accept the incense offering of the rebellious group. Korach spends the night inciting the Jews against Moshe and gathers them all up at the entrance of the tabernacle to witness the grand spectacle of the test that is being made for Hashem. And Hashem's glory appears in the tabernacle. And here's Shnayim Yomi for today.
Aliyah Shniya talks about Dasa and Aviram, the two people that we hear about so much in the Torah, and this Aliyah were actually joined forces with Korach. Now these two people, or I call them these two dudes, usually I call them, I never got how they have the chutzpah. As Moshe Rabbeinu literally went to them and told them, don't fight with me this time, don't do it, says Moshe Rabbeinu, do not fight, don't go with Korach, Hashem is going to kill you. And still Dasa and Aviram literally argue with Moshe Rabbeinu, and as it says in this Aliyah, they actually told Moshe Rabbeinu, this whole thing that you're the Navi and you give your brother the Kahuna and you take the Malchut and you're the king, you're doing it all for yourself. You took us out of Kiryas Yamsuf, say Dasa and Aviram. You think you did it for Klal Yisrael, you did it for the Jews, you did it for yourself. Moshe Rabbeinu, you're all about honor. It's even hard to speak like that, even to say that pshat, it's hard to say to Moshe Rabbeinu. But Dasa and Aviram literally had the chutzpah. They were so disrespectful and disgusting. They really had the chutzpah to say to Moshe Rabbeinu. After Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to actually have a discussion with them to try to make it work, not to disrespect them, let me talk to you. Still, Dasa and Aviram still argue with Moshe Rabbeinu. From here we learn, Rabotai, a very, very dangerous game. Try to put yourself in that mindset. Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader of the Jews, literally just took us out of Kriyat Yamsuf. And he talks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Who was the closest to Hashem? Moshe Rabbeinu. It says, V'chor biti ne'emanu. Moshe was the closest to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Dasa and Aviram knew that. But because of their egos, because of their ga'ava, because of their jealousy, they did the worst act, one of the worst acts ever in the Torah, to argue with Moshe Rabbeinu. And even when he comes to ask you for forgiveness with all his kavod of Moshe Rabbeinu, they still said, no, Moshe Rabbeinu, I don't even want to see your face. You're so selfish. And then Moshe Rabbeinu turned to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he told him, Hashem, even when we left Mitzrayim, I took my chamo, I took my donkey. I didn't want to say, oh, I'm Moshe Rabbeinu, give me a golden wagon. No, I went down with the chamor just to show that I'm not in it for myself. I'm not in it for the wealth, for the honor. I'm here to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Dasa and Aviram, their ego was so high. Look where it got them to. It's such a dangerous game. It's a lesson for all of us. Every single person should know on their level. Yeah, maybe we don't really have Moshe Rabbeinu's, but the Midrash does say that every rabbi in every generation has the same din as Moshe Rabbeinu of that door. Or every kila that you daven, whatever the rabbi is a rabbi is a rabbi. Sometimes a person should remind himself to learn from this Aliyah from Dasa and Aviram. Not to be that type of person. The Chas Hashem, the ego could be so high to really argue with big rabbis, big Tamidei Chachamim, and really even be disrespectful to them. Person has to be very, very careful not to follow on the path of Dasa and Aviram and really go extra careful to respect other rabbis.
All right, let us do our Parsha song.
Korach was unhappy and dissatisfied. He felt his rights to the Kuna were denied. Korach was jealous and vain. He was only interested in personal gain. So a rebellion Korach led. Why is Moshe our leader Moshe was humblest of all men. That's why he was chosen by Hashem. Always humble, always true, was our leader Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem's punishment through Korach wrong. Moshe became ever so strong. Korach and his army was swallowed by the ground. From Korach's army no one alive was found. Moshe was humblest of all men. That's why he was chosen by Hashem. Always humble, always true, was our leader Moshe Rabbeinu.
All right. Fantastic. Here's Chaim Brook with a day in Bozeman, Montana.
So it's another stormy night. So this is one side, right? This is the west side of the house, and that's the south side. And here, look at the clouds with the storm coming in on the east side. But then look what I discovered. I was lying in bed. You won't believe it. And I saw it through the bathroom window. So only in Montana you can see this. Literally, I'm lying in bed through the windows. I went outside to video it. Look at that. Look at that incredible sight. We're going to make a bracha in a minute on the rainbow that we are commanded to, thanking God for fulfilling his covenant of never destroying the world again through the rainbow. Unreal. Here, now this is the north side. This is the back of the house. So on one side you still have blue skies. And you come around and kind of over the bridges. Moited it.
All right. Chana Weisberg.
Do you know those optical illusions where a drawing of an old woman can also be a pretty young girl? Similarly, can we look at something and see a deeper message? This week, Korach and his group incite a mutiny against Moshe. They offer the holy Ketoret, claiming that the entire nation, and not just Aaron, is holy. The earth swallows the mutiners, and a fire consumes the incense offerers. God then commands that the offering pans be beaten into sheets used to plate the altar. Why should sinful pans be transformed into a holy altar? Because, the Rebbe explains, though these rebels acted sinfully and were punished, beneath their complaint was a desire, however misguided, to come closer to God. And if this is how God views inanimate metal, not wanting a holy intention to go to waste, imagine his love for human beings who are never irredeemable. Through a sinful episode, the Rebbe challenges us. Discover the underlying positive motive and find God's infinite love for us, even when we are misguided. Life can sometimes be an optical illusion. Imagine if we applied this empowering approach to how we view ourselves, each other, and our world.
Jewish audio on Chabad.org.
Do You Procrastinate? By Aaron Loshak. Is there something nice you've decided to do for someone, but you're dragging your feet getting it done? Have you recently resolved that you will finally invite your neighbors over for dinner, yet you haven't actually reached out to make it happen? Can you recall a time when you told yourself, this week I'm going to take the time to look over that business proposal my friend asked me to review, only to flame out and procrastinate yet again? It happens all the time. You fully intend to be a knight in shining armor, but between your own family, your tight schedule, and the extra hours spent cleaning out the garage, you just never get around to it. While completely understandable, it's not the best way to do things. let's explore some alternatives. The almond test. Our parasha is full of political intrigue, with the villainous Korach challenging Moses' leadership and trying to wrest the priesthood away from Aaron. Of course, that didn't end too well for him and his crew, as the ground literally swallowed them alive. But the legitimacy of Aaron's priesthood was still under fire, and so we read of a test staged to quiet the chatter once and for all. Each tribe placed a staff in the tabernacle with their name on it. And on the following days Moses came to the tent of testimony, and behold, Aaron's staff for the house of Levi had blossomed. It gave forth blossoms, sprouting buds, and produced ripe almonds. At last, definitive proof of Aaron's right to the priesthood. But the obvious question is, why almonds? The short answer is that almonds grow very quickly. In fact, the Hebrew word for almond, shkedim, is etymologically related to the word shaked, which means quick. Due to their element of speed, almonds are the appropriate fruit for the priesthood. The priestly blessing. What's the connection between the priesthood and speed? One of the primary features of the priestly rite is the priestly blessing. During the repetition of the Amidah of the morning prayers, the priests get up in front of the people and bless them with 3 special verses that speak of God's grace and favor. It is a moving moment, a gift to the people that the priests, as they recite their blessing just prior, do with love. Curious minds ask, what is the purpose of this blessing? After all, God is the one who blesses the people, so why are the priests taking his job? What's more, the content of their blessing are promises God made to the people. So what exactly is their function? The Kabbalists answered this question by opening a window into the mechanics of God's blessing to us. Human minds are accustomed to thinking of blessing in material terms, health, prosperity, and a nice family. But that is obviously not how matters originate within God's treasury. After all, God is far beyond all paradigms of materialism, good or bad. So the blessing as it originates in God's benevolence is something far more spiritual than we could possibly imagine. From that spiritual conception of goodness, there is a long process until it evolves and develops into money in your bank account and happy, smiling children. Inasmuch as God's blessing takes time and development until it manifests in physical life, it's entirely possible that it gets stuck along the way. Imagine God's blessing as a slowly trickling stream that eventually gets to its destination. But there's always the possibility that driftwood, a large rock, or a dry patch will obstruct the trickle. So too, the blessing destined to come our way can get stuck if we do not merit it to actually materialize today. And here is where the priest's job comes in. They can speed up and smooth out the process. By invoking God's true love for his people, the priestly blessing turns that steady trickle into a raging river, a Niagara Falls that barrels through any obstruction. Anything that might have gotten in the way prior is now blown right out of the way. Closing the deal. By way of illustration, imagine you sign a contract on a house and are now working on getting a mortgage. You collect all the monies for the down payment, you gather all the paperwork, and you make sure your credit score is squeaky clean. Your mortgage broker tells you, it looks good, you've already locked in a rate, and now you're just waiting for the underwriter to sign off on it. The deal is closed, the loan is all but assured, and you really have no reason to assume anything will go wrong. Yet that underwriter still hasn't signed it off, and you are anxious. Every morning you wake up thinking, will today be the day? And day goes by, and crickets. It's nerve-wracking. Now, imagine you have someone who can place a call and say, hey, can you just sign off on the loan? Wouldn't that be great? Well, that's the priestly job. When they bless the congregation, they act as the well-connected underwriter who can sign off on the blessing coming your way and make it happen today. Hence, the speedy almonds. Be your own underwriter. We can all emulate the priests in our own lives. So, if you've decided to do something really nice for someone else, or pledged a friend a loan, it's time to carry through. Yes, of course things happen. You get a text from a friend who's desperately in need of a kind word or some quality time, and you respond, totally, we should definitely go out sometime. And then you forget about it, and your poor friend is left wondering, when she can contact you again to follow through. Your friend who badly needs that loan for her startup business is still waiting for you to come through, and you just completely forgot about it. Yes, it happens, but we can all do better. Be like the priests and be like your own underwriter. Pick up your pen and sign off on it right now. Follow up, follow through, and make sure all the kind things you have pledged to do for others don't get stuck midstream.
All right. And Rabbi Shayamar.
There's a library filled with books of Torah, a synagogue filled with Sifrei Torah need a mezuzah? Does a talit, which is completely turquoise, need a small turquoise string at each one of its four corners? These were the questions that Korach had for Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe, the leader of the Jewish people. In other words, Kol ha'eda kulam kedoshim. We are all holy. We all heard from God, I am the Lord your God at Sinai. V'lama titnaseu al ke'al Hashem. And why do you, Moshe Rabbeinu, think that you're better than anybody else? Why do you think that Aaron should be elevated to be the high priest? I want to be a Kohen Gadol too. I want to be a high priest myself. Korach, as wealthy as he was, and as great and smart as he was, could not handle the fact that somebody was better than him. He realized that he was different, not only at the level which is intellectual, in the revelation that he received from Hashem compared to Moshe. Nobody can deny that Moshe Rabbeinu was close to God. But here, he was saying at the level of the mitzvot that we do on a regular basis, putting on tefillin, giving tzedakah, at this level we're all the same. So who do you think you are, Moshe? It wasn't enough for Korach to fight against Moshe by himself. He decided to convince and spread this negativity to 250 of the greatest rabbis, the greatest leaders of the generation. Eventually, they went against Moshe. And when you go against Moshe, you're going against God. They got swallowed by the earth. And we learned from this a tremendous lesson. In the Torah, in the Ten Commandments, it says, Lo tahmod. You should not covet. You should not desire what doesn't belong to you. Why does the Torah teach us this? And why is this the 10th of the 10 commandments? To teach us that if a person respects all the commandments, but in his heart, he's looking always to try to be someone else, to have what somebody else has, it means essentially that he doesn't believe that what God gave him is the best for him. Every one of us. It doesn't matter how great, how wealthy, how successful, how simple, how sincere, whoever we are, each one of us has a purpose in life. Your purpose is different than anybody else's purpose. You have your own individual purpose in this world. So don't try to be somebody else. One day, a student of a yeshiva in Israel had a big problem. All of his uncles and cousins were great rabbis, but he didn't have a head for the Talmud. So Rabbi Slavatitsky, his partner in learning, told him, write to the Rebbe. So he writes to the Rebbe the following: Rebbe, I'll never become a Gadol B'Israel. I will never become one of the great leaders of the Jewish people, one of the great rabbis, authorities in Jewish law, like my cousins, which are so knowledgeable in the whole Talmud. To this, the Rebbe answered him the following. And I think this is the lesson of our parasha. He said, is this really the purpose of man? To become a gadol, to become a giant, a great leader that's going to be recognized by the masses? No. The Torah and the Talmud in Kiddushin teaches us, Lo nivreti ela leshamesh et koni. I was created for the sole purpose of serving my Creator. And then the Rebbe concludes, it's possible that all the efforts you're making, you're doing, in order to understand the Talmud with your capacity, your mental, intellectual capacity, in this sense you are fulfilling with your effort more the purpose for which Hashem created you than your cousins, which have a greater intellectual capacity and might know a lot, but at their level Hashem demands more from them. Let's ask ourselves, what does Hashem demand from you? What does Hashem demand from us? Once we know what Hashem asks from us, let's do our best and not try to be someone we are not.
All right. And let us go back now and do Rabbi Zosha Zilberstein, who has something to say about the Rebbe.
Friends, let's give some tzedakah today, Erev Rosh Chodesh, Tammuz, excuse me. But instead of, at this moment, focusing on the month of Tammuz, I'm still in the month of Sivan, particularly in yesterday's date. Yesterday was the 28th day of Sivan, Koyach Sivan, the strength, the power, the force of Sivan. Now, why am I saying this? Because in 1941, on the 28th day of the month of Sivan, the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin arrived to New York. And as we know, from the moment the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin arrived, the landscape of Jewish life in New York has completely changed to what we know it today. But first, let me go back, give you a little bit of background. The Rebbe and the Rebbitzin lived in France for many years. And on June 14, in 1940, when the Nazi Yamach Shumam army conquered Paris, there was actually a French general who was acquainted with the Rebbe, who offered the Rebbe a countryside, a residence in the countryside, thinking you'll be safe over there. The Rebbe refused, wasn't going to stay under Nazi occupation. And actually, with one of the very last trains leaving the city of Paris, the Rebbe and the Rebbitzin eventually arrived in Vichy, which at that time was considered a safer place. But he only stayed there for a few months because of the situation then, and they arrived to Nice in the southern part of France. The Rebbe's father-in-law, that is the Rebbitzin Chaim Mushke's father, who he himself survived the bombardments in Warsaw, miraculously was saved from war-torn Europe, was extremely active and involved in seeing to it that the Rebbe should, and the Rebbitzin should somehow be able to be saved from Europe and make it into the States. This is a story for itself, written extensively in many different places. But here are a few glimpses of the Rebbe's life and the Rebbitzin's life while under occupation. The Rebbitzin said that the Rebbe continues his meticulous lifestyle in Torah and Judaism. First of all, he constantly wrote his thoughts on Torah. We find in the Rishimis, in those notes, that he gives the date and the address where he did it in Vichy, in Paris, on the boat, etc., etc., while fleeing, while on the run, so to say, for his life. He never forgot a moment to study Torah. There was a story that while still in Paris, and the war already started, it was Sukkot, and this esrog that somebody had, the Rebbe didn't feel that it's good enough. Somehow he managed to travel to Italy and get the most magnificent esrog and come back. His care for the other was exceptional. When he arrived in Marseille, to be able to stay in the city, you had to have a residence, an official residence. There were hundreds of thousands of refugees. They had no place where to go. They had no residence. So there was a hotel that you were able to register that you live in this particular hotel. But to do so, you had to show that you're capable of paying at least, I think, for about a week. People didn't have money. So what did the Rebbe do? The Rebbe had a $100 bill. And the Rebbe would stand in the vicinity of the hotel, give those refugees, here's a $100 bill, go register in the hotel, get yourself an address, and then give me back the $100 bill. And like this, the Rebbe would give this $100 bill over and over and over and over, trusting the people they would not disappear with it. So as to save them, they should have an official residence to be able to stay. But eventually, Baruch Hashem, on the 12th of June, in 1941, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin boarded the ship in Lisbon, Portugal. They had to smuggle through the border, and eventually they made it. And on the ship Serpa Pinto, they arrived on the 23rd of June, as I said, the 28th day of the month of Sivan, to the shores of the United States. I just want to read for you a letter that the Rebbe wrote to someone with whom he was acquainted in during those times in France, and how the Rebbe looks at the positivity of every experience. And this is what he writes. Your letter awakened memories of the time where we were together in Vichy and Nice under conditions to which we were both unaccustomed. And the Rebbe continues. When a person is uprooted from his habitual environment, there come to light certain traits of his inner character as they are in their purity, undistorted by the expectations of society. Often, these traits reveal the hidden good in this person, of which perhaps even he himself had been unaware, because they were hidden under the layers of manners and social conventions. Fortunate is the person who does not allow these traits to disappear when he subsequently settles down and finds tranquility.
And there you have it, which takes us now to Tehillim. Here we go. Chapter 122. All those people.
Shamala Yisrael, Bisamachti, Vayimni, Vaysalino, Yinay, Oyim and I saw you, Ralayinu, Bishara, Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim, Hallelujah, Ki Shachura La Yachdav, Sheshamu Shatim Shiftaya, Eidus Israel, Lehoyda Yisrael, Alayna, Kishama Yashavu Chizais V'Mishvat, Kisais Levayis David, Shalu Shalayim, Yerushalayim, Yishrayu, I have a year, Yishalayim, Chayleich Shava, V'ayim Yisrael, V'ma'anachai V'reya, Yadavrona Shalayim, V'ma'anei Yisraelina Yeloheinu, Avav Shatayila, V'ma'anei Yisrael Shem Elokeinu, Avav Shatayila,
Tanya and 5 for today, the 30th day of Sivan. Rosh Chodesh.
Tanya thoughts for the 30th of Sivan. You know what we know about Hashem? Nothing. Well, that's a start, knowing that we don't know. Yet, we talk like we do know. You know, we talk of lights, vessels, oiris, kalim. We talk about spherois. We talk about iu, v'gamu, chad, he, and all that he causes are one. These are terms which we use through our lens, which Hashem permits us to utilize so we can talk about Hashem without ever making the mistake of thinking that we know Hashem.
Let's talk Tanya for the 30th of Sivan, the first day of Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. Today we're going to finish chapter 9, and with this we're going to conclude the conversation that we began a few days ago in the beginning of chapter 8. It was a 2-chapter conversation. We started off talking about God's absolute and essential unity in and of himself, meaning that God is not a composite unity, and despite the fact that God has many different attributes, kindness, wisdom, desire, feelings, nevertheless, none of these create a ribui or a multiplicity within God, and God remains a single unit, a single entity, not one composed of many different components, which doesn't make sense to us because we don't have that in our experience. And that was really the conversation of the last few days of Tanya, explaining just how removed our experience is from God's, and we discussed how we are comprised of 5 different levels: wisdom, intellect. Wisdom and intellect is the first one, emotions, thought, speech, and action, whereas God is comprised of an infinite amount of levels, with wisdom being the lowest one. So, after that entire conversation, is it a surprise that we can't understand God's unity? Of course we can't understand God's unity. Again, this is something, God is something completely beyond what our experience and our reality is. And that's why the Alter Rebbe tells us that in the Zohar, when the Zohar refers to God's attributes, the spheres, they're referred to as Raza de Mehemenusa, which means the secret of faith. Now, what's the connection between God's attributes and faith? The answer is that the only way we can accept the existence of God's attributes, and at the same time, God's absolute unity, we can only accept it as a matter of faith. It's not something that we can possibly understand. Nevertheless, even though we cannot fully understand it, the Alter Rebbe in the coming chapter, and starting with tomorrow's Tanya, the Alter Rebbe is going to give us somewhat of an understanding by using an analogy, and we are going to analyze that which the Kabbalists refer to. The reason why the Kabbalists refer to God's energy as oir, as light, understanding why they refer to it as light will help us, give us at least a little of an understanding how all of God's attributes do not constitute a contradiction to God's absolute unity, his inherent and internal unity.
Thank you for joining Tanya in 5. Today's lesson for the 30th of Sivan. We conclude chapter 9 of Shar Yichud Ve'emunah. In one word, this chapter, Raimus, exalted. God is exalted from any type of descriptor, even calling him wise, even calling him kind and merciful. He is completely beyond it. You cannot even consider in any manner that term in reference to the essence of God. The sages do call him that. The Torah actually calls God in the term of wisdom. It means that he's the source of it, but he is very much infinitely removed from it. The Alter Rebbe in today's class begins with a note that the mystical principle of tzimtzum, contraction, contracting upon the Ein Sof light of God, is an underlying the underlying purpose of this contraction is the condensing of the light in order that it should become clothed within the vessels of the 10 divine attributes. It is only once the light of the Ein Sof is clothed in the vessels of Chabad that it can be stated that God is, as Maimonides says, the knower, the known, and the knowledge. And by knowing himself, meaning he knows the vessels of Atzilus, which those vessels of Atzilus, they become the soul and the life force of the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, and hence then you can refer to God as the all-knowing, or for that matter, any type of attribute of God. In other words, it is only through the principle of tzimtzum. From the tzimtzum means that that light now can vest itself into a vessel. That vessel now gives definition. It's like a vessel, a colored glass gives color to the light, whether it's red, whether it's white, and so on. Now, within this tzimtzum, this contraction that we're speaking about, that it now vests itself, and therefore God can be known in this capacity. But at the same time, we have to know that God himself is infinitely removed before the tzimtzum, before God contracts on the Ein Sof light. He is elevated above these qualities and these limitations of wisdom to the extent that it cannot be considered to have any relationship to him. As a matter of fact, wisdom has the quality of a physical action. And even though we learned that there are 5 degrees of separation in the human experience, in the human condition. So that concludes the note. Again, the concept here is that only because of the contraction of the infinite light of God, then we can call God as any kind of descriptor of all-knowing, merciful, and whatever else. Now, the Alter Rebbe says, he continues, that we're not concerned with esoteric matters. In other words, how this all came about. This idea that God is infinitely removed from any type of attribute. Yes, we said it is the contraction, the tzimtzum. But what's important for us is that we need to believe in a complete faith. Matters that are revealed to us, and what's revealed to us is the teachings of the Torah. In other words, the understanding of it is esoteric, but the teachings are a given. What are the teachings? As it says in the Zohar, that God, He, and His attributes are one. That's finished. Meaning the attributes of God, meaning His will, His wisdom, His understanding, His knowledge, are all one with the essence of God. And therefore He is alone who could be exalted. He's infinitely elevated beyond these qualities of wisdom and intellect and comprehension, and hence also being that He is united with these qualities in a perfect oneness, therefore these qualities are also beyond our comprehension. Now there's understanding God's will, to understand God's wisdom. Since it's united in one with Him, it is beyond our comprehension, and hence the spheres, or as they're called in the Zohar, are a secret of the faith, which is something that we only understand we only grasp with faith, but not with our intellect, because it transcends our intellect. Again, God is infinitely removed from any divine attribute, but yet He's totally one with that divine attribute, which that itself is a paradox which we can't really understand. But that's something that's a given, and therefore we have faith in that fact, because otherwise it would be a quality of God that's not like us. Our qualities are a composite of us. We're not a simplistic whole oneness with our qualities. We're a composite, and therefore we could choose to be kind, we could choose to be severe, we could choose our wisdom or not. By God, they're a total whole oneness with Him, and that is a matter of faith, something that we can't comprehend, and therefore those qualities of God, just like God, are beyond comprehension, so likewise the qualities are beyond our intellect. They transcend it. And that is Tanya 5. Thank you for joining.
That moves us to Pirkei Avot, chapter 4, Mishnah 3.
Welcome back to another Pirkei Avot text explication. I'm Rabbi Drew. We are now on the 3rd text in the 4th chapter of Pirkei Avot, and we have another piece of wisdom from Ben Azai. We previously heard from Ben Azai in the previous video, and here, and just as I had mentioned, Ben Azai literally translates to son of Azai. He does have a first name, though. He's not just the son of. He is a person in his own right with a name, which is Shimon, or Simon. Now, this statement is actually very similar to what we read and heard in the previous text, which is a 2-part initial statement or assertion, and then backed up by a 2-part reasoning. So here we go. He says, Al tehi vaz l'chol adam v'al tehi mafli l'chol davar. Do not belittle anybody, nor disregard anything. Let me say that again. Do not belittle anybody, nor disregard anything. And really what he is going for here is, if there's someone, why would you necessarily belittle that person? Don't belittle people. Also,
don't just simply disregard something, or it's like a sort of a pushing away, just discarding. It's not just a disregard like I don't care about it. It's more of like a discarding. It's a little bit more active. The active disregarding of objects, as well as the sort of active, almost even denigration of people, just not even caring about them. It's almost as if he is saying, whether it's a person or an object, don't be so quick to just toss it away. He actually is saying, give some thought, give some almost honor, really. I mean, that actually is the opposite of this verb vaz, of belittling, is give some honor, give some thought. And now here is his explanation for why, or his support, his reasoning. He says, She'ein lecha adam she'ein lo sha'ah, for there is no person that is without an hour. Ve'ein lecha davar she'ein lo makom, and there's no thing that does not have a particular place for it. Interesting. He says, basically, people have their time and things have their places. This kind of matches up with, I've said this before, it's fairly common in rabbinic literature to structure things in terms of for, and that usually works off of a 2x2 matrix. And that certainly is something we got from yesterday's text, and we are certainly also getting it from today's text, where it's a sort of a two-part assertion and a two-part support for those assertions. So, meaning, really what Ben Azai here is saying is, don't be so quick to belittle people, because they have their time. They might have their time to shine. They might have their time in the sun, and they might also have their time, even more specifically with regards to you, or to me, or to that person. Don't be so quick to just say no. There is a purpose for this person, and they bring value. Don't be so quick to toss them away. And similarly with item, whether we're talking about animals, right? A dog, a horse, a cat, or we're talking about a chair, a table, or whatever it is, they all serve a purpose, and they have their place as well. So whether we're talking about time or place, people and objects, they have something to do. They're not just there, and they're not just for us to quickly denigrate and toss away. So I hope this was interesting. Ben Azai, as we heard and saw in the previous text, has some interesting perspectives on commandments, mitzvot va'averot, commandments and transgressions. And here that was a very particularistic, sort of almost like a religious wisdom piece. But this is actually more of a universalistic piece. This doesn't have to be specifically within the Jewish tradition about mitzvot and averot, of commandments and transgressions. This is a text where we see some wisdom, we hear some wisdom of Ben Azai, that he is now talking about something that is more universally applicable to really anybody. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was insightful, and thank you so much for watching.
All right, and that takes us to Sefer HaMitzvahs of the Rambam.
No, it's not impossible that Ebed say, just study Rambam each and every day. I'll never miss my daily Rambam. My Rebbe so desires, I'm not busy or too tired when I learn Rambam.
Baruch Hashem, it is day number 58 of our daily study of Rambam Sefer HaMitzvahs. And in the 3 chapters a day of Mishnah Torah, we are still in the laws of Sukkah, Shofar, Sukkah, Velulav, specifically chapters 6, 7, and 8. And our mitzvah today is a Sukkos mitzvah. Yesterday we also had a Sukkos mitzvah. Remember, we had the mitzvah to dwell in the Sukkah. Today we have Positive Commandment 169. Positive Commandment 169 is Ulakachtem lochem bayim harishon. You should take for yourself on the first day of Sukkot, Pri Eitz Hadar, the fruit of a beautiful tree, Kapes Tmorim, the palm fronds, Va'anaf Eitz Oves, the branch of a braided tree, Va'arve Nochal, and the willows of the brook,
So you're counting, you're keeping count. You're going to take for yourself on the first day of Sukkot a fruit of a beautiful tree. That's an esrog. A palm frond. That's a what we call lulav. A branch of a braided tree. That's myrtle. And the willow of the brook. That's a willow. Okay, so you got 4 species, and that's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to take these 4 species together, and we call that the mitzvah of shaking the lulav or benching lulav. It's really 4 species, but we refer to them collectively as lulav, and that is a mitzvah biblically on the first day. But we do this mitzvah rabbinically all week long, and we include it as well in our recitation of Hallel during the entire Yom Tov of Sukkot. But biblically, the commandment is on the first day of Sukkot. And I mentioned when we did a couple of days ago what happens when Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbos, that we don't sound the shofar. Similarly, when Sukkot falls on Shabbos, when the first day of Sukkot is Shabbos, so then we don't shake the lulav that day, and the first time we do it is on the second day, and that's when we make our bracha shechianu, along with the bracha on netilas lulav. So that's our mitzvah today. The 4 species, the 4 kinds, or benching lulav, however you want to refer to it. That was Positive Commandment 169. And we will see you tomorrow, God willing.
Besides for the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah, there's another mitzvah unique to the holiday of Sukkot. Positive mitzvah 169, the lulav. We are commanded to take 4 species: a lulav, which is a date palm branch, an etrog, which is a citron fruit, hadassim, which are myrtle branches, and aravot, which are willow branches. We take these 4 kinds and we bind them together, and with them we express our happiness in serving Hashem during all the 7 days of the holiday of Sukkot. Today it is also customary to take these 4 kinds and to shake them in all directions: right, left, forward, up, down, and backwards.
Mashiach, matters of All right. No longer will a man teach his friends, so they will all know me, from the smallest to the greatest. From the prophet Jeremiah. In the time of Mashiach, Hashem will be revealed to everyone equally, yet we are also told there'll be a study hall which Mashiach will teach people. In other words, everyone will know Hashem's essence equally. However, there'll be a difference in the way people understand and apply that knowledge of Torah law. Therefore, the verse refers to their smallest and their greatest, even in a time when Mashiach comes. We will still need teachers and leaders. Mashiach will teach and lead them all because he will be incomparably greater than all the rest of the nation. But teachers will still have a space where they will be required. Yeah. Here's Shmuel Tzvi.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Hope all is well. In today's HaYom we learn a beautiful message about how we have a godly soul and an animal soul, and an animal soul is where we get tested by the evil inclination, where God can test us in any situation that we find ourselves in. But we have to be very clever. And we learn in the HaYom that the Rebbeim say something very deep, that just because it's an animal soul, animals are sometimes very clever and conniving and cunning, like a fox. Sometimes the evil inclination, the evil part of us, tries to trick us, to make us feel like something is holy when it is really evil. And that's why we have to be super alert and super aware of what the evil inclination is trying to test us with. And an example of this could be is when you think you're, for example, when somebody needs you for an important situation, but you'd rather stay and be in your own environment, which is seemingly a holy environment, so you hold back from going to help a person. For example, let's say a person, there's always the story of the Baal Shem Tov, where the Baal Shem Tov said to a big tzaddik, who was known to be a tzaddik, this person, and the Baal Shem Tov said to him, how are you today, sir? And the person would fast and learn Torah all day and completely ignored the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov answered again, how are you, sir? The person didn't answer. Finally, Baal Shem Tov said to him, sir, why are you robbing Hashem of his parnasa? Why are you stealing from God? And the person lashed out. He said, how dare you? How could you say I'm stealing from God? What did the holy Baal Shem Tov say? He said, it says that Hashem lives off, Hashem, so to speak, gets sustained. The parnasa of Hashem, the sustenance, the wealth, that Hashem's wealth comes from the praises of Israel. So I asked you today, sir, how are you today? And you ignored me because you just wanted to learn Torah and study. You completely ignored me. I said, how are things? You had an opportunity to say, thank God, Baruch Hashem, thank God, everything is amazing, which is the greatest pleasure to God. You could have given God, said thank you to Hashem and blessed him. But instead, you wanted to just stay to yourself and ignore all those around you. You robbed Hashem of his sustenance. May we always be aware of these challenges, these tests that come before us, because they're really opportunities to turn the darkness into light. May we bring the coming of Mashiach, where our animal soul will become a vessel for our godly soul, so that the whole world will be filled with God's glory in a revealed way. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
All right. And now our PSAs. Masbia Soup Kitchen and Food Pantry, available by texting the word food to 726-879. In Rockland County, it's tomcheshabbos.org, and Lakewood, tomche.org. Achiezer.org is there for you for all your other needs, no matter what they would be. And Hatzalah EMS is available 24/7, 365 with their new Global Assist app. In times of bereavement, Miss Askim is there to help you out. And Just One Shabbos is dedicated to bringing our youth back to the beauty of Shabbat. Should you be the victim of or see a hate crime in progress, please call 911 immediately. Do not hesitate and go out there and wear a mask. I believe we were at a
mask. Wear a mask. Is this really much to ask? Tie some fabric around your face. Oh, it's the simplest of tasks. At the gym, at the store. Don't treat it like such a chore.
Be bigger than all those people. Okay, you can put on a mask and be safe and sane and get your vaccines and your booster shots. I found out yesterday that they are not planning on giving an Mpox vaccine booster yet. We'll see what happens with the summer. All right. Bring heaven down to earth with some wisdom. From the beginning of Hashem's creation, in our world, the low world of pain. Before Hashem created this world, he created worlds and destroyed them, created worlds and destroyed them. These I don't like, these I don't like. And then he created this one and said, this one I like. That's from Reshis Rabbah. Since the time the world was created, Hashem desired that he would have a home among the lowest beings. Why would an omnipotent God want to dwell in darkness? What desire could he have in a place that he found only through painful struggle and dogged effort? The answer is in the process of tikkun. We'll talk about that tomorrow. All right? Come to me on social media and to the Actors Rabbis groups at Clubhouse, Instagram, LinkedIn, Telegram, Twitter, WhatsApp, or at theactorsrabbi.com. Let's make an actor.
Baruch ato Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam boirei nefashos rabois v'chesronan al kol ma sheborasa lachayos bohem nefesh kol chai baruch chai haolamim.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to my Patreon sponsors, Pastor Bro, Ridal, Tarzan, Orchids, Dina D. Doctors. Make this all possible. So thank you very, very much. If you'd like to become a sponsor today, please go to patreon.com/theactorsrabbi or breakfastwithelli.live/tip-jar. All right. We have now a boutique concert by Gil Israelov, an up-and-coming singer, and I think you will enjoy this. I'm not exactly sure what the song is called, but you'll see it in the very beginning. All right? It is Monday. It is Rosh Chodesh. Have a blessed, blessed month. Tomorrow is the first day of Tammuz, the Hebrew month of Tammuz. Last night, today, and tomorrow are 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. Make sure you add the extra prayers and do something special. Have a nice meal. It's an American holiday here, apparently, so go out and do something American. All right? We will see you tomorrow. Go out and do something nice, something good for someone today. In the words of Rabbi Isaac Hamler, have affection for a fellow. Hashem will have affection for you. Do a kindness for a fellow. Hashem will do a kindness for you. Draw a fellow close, and Hashem will draw you close. I will see you tomorrow. I hope I fixed Clubhouse. Here we go with Gil Israelov. Enjoy. Here he comes.
ואני בחסדך מאמין, ורק בך אצפה תמיד לישועתך. בליבי שמורה אהבתי, היא רק לך כמו תמיד, ובתפילה נפשי אשא באמונה, באהבה, ותשמח על הכל וגם תסלח, ותמחול ותאמין כל הטוב שרק ממך, זה מתוך הנשמה שלך. יוצא לי אל הדרך, מכפר לכפר נדדתי, את הדרך שמעתי, לפעולות נתתי, לפרוק את מסעי, מכפר לכפר נדדתי, הנה האומות ירדתי, עוד נכנעת נסעתי, יאיר לי כוכבי. אל חי מרום עמל קרובים, כולם ברוחו יעלו. אם ננעלו דלתי נתיבים, דלתי מרום לא ננעלו. אל חי מרום עמל קרובים, כולם ברוחו יעלו. da da